This video is going to cover greatest common factors. The instructions ask us to find the GCF of each. What we're going to do is take each number, do the prime factorization tree, and find out, what they are in their simplest forms, what it can't break down into any further on both the 39 and the 6 for number 1. We're going to break them down, circle the numbers that they have in common, and then multiply those numbers together to find our greatest common factor. So let's start with number 1. So number 1, let's break down that 39. So we break down the 39, we get 3 and 13. Neither of those break down any further, so we're done with 39. So let's go ahead and write that 6. Break down the 6, we get 2 and 3. Neither of those break down any further. So now in orange, I'm going to circle the common numbers that they share. So the 3 and 3 both go into 39 and 6, and that's it. They don't share any other common numbers. For example, 13 and 39 is not in the 6, and the 2 and the 6 is not in the 39. So we take those three, and that's our final answer. We can't do anything further with that. I'm actually going to write that in blue so we can stay consistent. Okay, number 2, 24 and 28. So let's take the 24, break it down to 6 and 4. Take this 6, break it down to 2 and 3. Take this 4, break it down to 2 and 2. Look at the 28, break that down, 7 and 4. 7 doesn't break down any further. 4 breaks down to 2 and 2. So we're done with that. So now let's circle what they have in common. This has a 2 and so does this. This has a 3, but 28 doesn't have a 3, so we can't circle that. This has a 2, this also has a 2. This has another 2, but 28 does not have another 2 to circle, so we can't circle that 2. So let's move on to 28. This has a 7, but 24 doesn't have a 7, so we're done with that. So we're going to take this 2, put it in another color. We're going to take this 2 and write it down here. 2 times, then this 2 and this 2, and put it down here, 2. That's it. We're done with that. So when we multiply those 2 times 2, we end up getting 4 is the greatest common factor of 24 and 28. Okay, let's look at number 3, 40 and 10. So let's take the 40, break it down to 8 and 5, break this 8 down to 4 and 2, break this 4 down to 2 and 2. Can't break down anything further. Let's look at the 10. That breaks down to 5 and 2. Those don't break down any further. So now let's go ahead and circle the common numbers. So they both share a 2 here and here. They don't have any, the 10 doesn't have any other 2s, so we can't circle these other 2s. This has a 5 and this has a 5, and that's all we can do. So we multiply the numbers, 2 times 5, and we end up getting 10 as our greatest common factor for 40 and 10. Number 4, 39V and 30UV. So let's go ahead and write 39V. Break that down, 3 and 13 go into 39. We can also do another little branch and put a V. 3 and 13 and V don't break down any further, so let's go ahead and write 30UV. That breaks down to 15 and 2, and we'll do 2 more branches for U and V. 15 breaks down to 3 and 5, and nothing breaks down any further. So that's that. So now let's circle the ones that they have in common. They both share 3, they both share a V, and that's it. So what we're going to do is multiply these numbers. So we have that 3 times the V, we end up getting 3V is our greatest common factor. Okay, number 5, 35n squared m. Let's break that down to 7 and 5, as well as n times n for the n squared, and then an m for that lonely m. Now let's take the 21m squared times n. Break that down, we have 7 and 3. Break that m squared down to m times m, and break that n down just to n. Nothing's going to break down any further, so we can go ahead and circle the common numbers. So we have a 7 and a 7, those are the same. We have an n and an m and an m. And that's it. So let's go ahead and multiply these numbers. So we have 7 times n times m. We end up getting 7mn as our greatest common factor. Okay, number 6. 30y cubed. Break that down to 15 and 2, and that y cubed breaks down to y. 15 breaks down to 3 and 5. 20y squared, we break that down to 5 and 4. This 4 breaks down to 2 and 2. The y squared breaks down to y and y. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what they share in common. They both have a 5. They both have a 2. They both have 2 y's, so we can circle those. And that's it. So let's go ahead and multiply these out. We get 5 times 2 times y. We end up getting 10y squared. Okay, number 7. 54 and 45. So let's do 54. We break that down. We end up getting 2. 2 goes into 5. 27 times. 27 breaks down to 9 and 3. 9 breaks down to 3 and 3. Let's look at the 45. That breaks down to 9 times 5. 9 breaks down to 3 and 3. So we're done with that. So let's go ahead and circle the ones that they have in common. This has a 3, this has a 3, this has a 3, and this has a 3. And that's it. So we just multiply those two numbers, 3 times 3. We end up getting 9 is our greatest common factor. And I'm going to stop at I'm actually going to do run down to number 18 to kind of show you a tough one, but it's because it's all repetition. There's really no, there's no tricks and stuff like that. It's all the same concept. But let me go down to number 18 so I can show you how to do it for 3. Same thing. So let's take that 140n and break that down. So we can do 10 and 14 as well as an n. 10 breaks down to 5 and 2. 14 breaks down to 7 and 2, and that n is going to stay because we can't do anything with it. Then we have 140m squared. Break that down to 10 and 14. This 10 to 5 and 2. This 14 to 7 and 2. This m squared becomes m and m. We can't do anything with that, so let's go ahead and do the 80m squared. 80 becomes 40 and 2. 40 becomes 10 and 4. 10 becomes 5 and 2. 4 becomes 2 and 2. M squared becomes m and m. So now let's go ahead and circle all. Now we have to make sure that all 3 of them share a common factor. So let's look at 5 on this one, 5 on this one, and 5 here. They all have a 2, so let's circle those 2's. They all have another 2. Okay, and I think that's it, because even though this has a 7 and this has a 7, the 80m squared does not have a 7, so we can't do anything with that. Let's look at the variables now. This has an n, but 140m squared does not have an n, so we can't circle anything from there. So let's just multiply the numbers that we have. So we have 5 times 2 times 2. When we multiply those, we end up getting 20 for our greatest common factor. And this video is on greatest common factors.